Yes, so yeah, what a time this is, right? I mean, with so many things happening politically and otherwise, it sometimes feels quite surreal. I mean, especially for Canada to be in something like this. Otherwise, you don't really hear much about Canada, right? On the political circles, in the sense like if you were to uh, on a regular basis, or if you are on a following political news, and you don't really hear much about Canada, you don't really think much about Canada is like Switzerland, like Sweden, like Norway, like Iceland. These countries, you never hear about them in terms of the major political issues, or what's happening, what's not happening, where the big wigs of political institutions are clashing. You never hear it. But now Canada is in the middle of one of the biggest political upheavals, right? Between India, of course. And they've chosen to pick a battle with India, which is quite interesting. Uh, I'm not going to comment on anything to do with what is happening, as far as, or rather, what is the context of this, because I have absolutely zero knowledge. Yes, of course, except for what we hear in the media. Trudeau has made some statements. India has retaliated. Trudeau continues to make statements. India continues to retaliate, of course, to those, and react to those statements. Besides that, that's basically the extent of the real factual information that I am aware of. Apart from that, of course, there are so much more that is happening uh, uh, behind the scenes, which I don't think you and I, the common people, will ever know what really happened, what is really happening. And therefore, when we see these TikTok videos, we see these Instagram videos, we see these YouTube videos, we obviously see some very nasty and ridiculous mainstream media channels whose basically the main job is to incite people. They want to get them more angry and agitated, because that's where they get their eyeballs from. But if you're smart, if you're intelligent, you probably would want to try and see what is more factual, and leave it at that. If you buy into these kind of narratives that a lot of media channels will try to portray, then you will find yourself to be in a very nasty mood with this whole thing that is happening. This is, of course, if Canada is of any remote interest to you. But if you are thinking about living, studying, working, visiting Canada, migrating to Canada, then obviously you should have subscribed to the channel already now. But at this point of time, we will do our weekly roundup, where we will go through all the things that have happened within the Canadian immigration processes, and then we will talk about some more things as to what you cannot do if you are still looking to come to Canada. Starting with the quote of the week: the life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change. Jim Rohn is my favorite motivational speaker. Obviously, he's no more. He passed away in 2004 or 2005. I don't remember exactly when, but a great speaker. If you still haven't heard him, or if you haven't found him yet, then please check him out on YouTube. He just astounding what he says, and what he can really do with your mind if you put your head to it. And again, another quote which says, your life does not get better by chance. So if you're expecting that just by chance things will get better, just by chance things will change for you, things just by chance you can improve everything, then probably that's not how it's going to happen. It will only happen by change. The change that you make, for good or for bad, that depends on you which way you want to go. But only when you make those changes will you see things getting better. Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup, PNP updates, Express Entry, other news, of course, and then question and answer. That's how we're going to go. If you still have questions, please hold them back till we get to the question and answer stage. PNP draws, let's start with that one. Ontario has been active this week, thankfully, just like Express Entry. But Ontario, let's talk about that. On the 19th of September, Ontario held a draw for the master's and PhD streams. 608 invitations were issued, and the minimum score for master's graduate stream was 41, and PhD graduate stream was 40. Now, the scores of 41 and 40 are on the Ontario's points grid that is meant for people who have completed their master's or PhD in the designated universities in Ontario. So if you are one of those, and if you have completed your university degree, master's degree, or a PhD in Ontario within the last 2 years, hopefully you would have already created your expression of interest. When you do create your expression of interest, you will get these points. And if your score was 41 or 40 lower score, then hopefully you would have been invited in this draw. 608 candidates were invited. If you're still considering I keep saying still, okay. If you are considering to study in Canada, or if you want to come to Canada as an international student, and if you are looking at master's or a PhD program, then probably consider Ontario, because this can offer you a great option. Because once you complete your education, you will have this opportunity to apply under the master's or PhD stream. On 21st of September, Ontario held a French-speaking skilled worker general occupation. Bit of a mouthful there. And they have invited 63 candidates with a score between 348 and 434. 434, the high limit at 434. Why? Because by now, I'm sure you already know that whenever Ontario conducts these draws, then the higher limit or the upper limit is usually in tandem with the last express entry draw. So the last express entry draw for the French speakers was at 435, and therefore their score upper limit is at 434. But it went right down to 348, which is good. But only 63 candidates were invited, which tells you that there were not too many there. Why? Because in order to be eligible for this stream, you needed a minimum of CLB 6 in English and CLB 7 in French. If you were a federal skilled worker, obviously it meant that you could not have chosen English as your first language, because it's CLB 6. With CLB 6, you cannot even create your language. You cannot even create your express entry profile. So your first language would have been French, and you also have an English language test. So that's the French speaker stream. I've been saying this so many times before. Then, if you're still thinking about taking up French, then I guess the ongoing draws is a testament of the fact that you should consider that seriously. Remember, make the change and you can make it better. British Columbia on the 19th of September also held its draw, BNP draw, inviting 222 candidates. This was via the general draw, which includes the tech occupation. So it was primarily a tech draw, but they also conducted a targeted draw, and they have continued to conduct the targeted draw since the beginning of this year. So healthcare and childcare occupations. The score range for the general draw was between 89 and 111. So, but also please do bear this in mind that you need a job offer in order to be eligible under these draws with British Columbia. Manitoba on the 21st of September conducted the first draw of the month, issued 620 LAAs, letter of advice to apply. Everybody has a different one. Somebody called it LAA, ITAs, notifications of interest. So in this one, the occupation codes which were considered were beginning 6-4, sales and service representatives, and 6-5 codes, sales and service support representatives. Out of 620 letters that were issued, 59 were issued to the candidates who had a valid express entry profiles. Cannot be true, because 6-4 and 6-5, the NOC codes are not correct. I'll have to check those. But yes, 620 letters of advice were given out on this one. Alberta conducted a draw under the AAIP, which has released its result. Alberta Advantage Immigrant Program. That's what it is. They invited 300 applicants with a CRS score of 383. The priority sector in this case was tourism and hospitality occupations with Alberta job offer. So if you had an LMIA, you had an Alberta job offer, you would have received an invitation. 383 was the score. Please bear in mind, not everybody gets invited. And Alberta, though they have listed tourism and hospitality occupations, the NOC codes have not been published. They don't really, give us any information on that. And also they give preference to people who have family members in Alberta, which is siblings, parents, or children. So that's how it works. Alberta conducted another draw, which was on the 14th of September. They invited 142 candidates, score of only 301. But this time they invited candidates with family connections, as I was just talking to, siblings and parents, and primary occupations in demand. Again, we do not know what those primary occupations in demand. They never make that information public. Express entry, of course, after a long gap. When I'm saying long, I mean it obviously seems long, right? Whenever they miss a draw, it makes us quite nervy and tensed about this. But they did conduct a draw finally on the 19th of September. The earlier draw, the one before this, was on the 15th of August. So almost, what was it now? 5 weeks. That was the gap. This was an express entry draw which was conducted on a Tuesday. 3,200 invitations were issued with a score, extremely high score of 531. Yeah, this was as good as a PNP draw. But of course, there are people who do get LMIAs, people who do have arranged job offers, like there could be intra-company transfers. They could also be senior executive level people who have 200 points for their LMIAs or job offers. And they could also be individuals who are, in Canada, in the sense like they are 29 years or below. They have 3 years of work experience from their home country. They have 1 year of work experience in Canada, and they have also completed Canadian Masters. Those people would also have a score of about 531 and above. Of course, they have to have a CLB 9 in English. I know there are not too many. It's like a unicorn, but there are quite a few of those as well. The tiebreaker here applied for the 12th of September, which basically meant that if your score was 531, then if you created a profile after the 12th of September, then your profile was not considered in this draw. That's what tiebreaker means. Then again, of course, as Mark Miller, the immigration minister, had announced earlier on Monday that they would be conducting their first ever transport category specific draw. They did that on the 20th of September. And this time they invited only 1,000 invitations. They invited only 1,000 candidates. The score came down to 435. Now, 435 obviously is a good score, but honestly, I was hoping for a much lower score. In this particular draw, with the tiebreaker was 17th of June, which basically applies only to the scores of 435. So candidates who had a score of 435, if you created a profile after 17th of June, your profile was not considered. So that's what it means. 10 NOC codes were included. This included truck drivers. This included airline pilots and some railway journeymen. I don't know the exact titles, but you can see the NOC codes, 10 of them. It was anticipated that this would obviously be a small draw. One of the reasons is because when Globe and Mail, one of the news publications, when they disclosed the quotas that IRCC has for different occupations, it was understood that for transport category, they have only about 2% approximately of the total invitations, not just category-based invitations, of the total invitations, they have only 2% quota for this category. So therefore, you were not really expecting a lot of invitations. So with only 1,000 invitations and still 3 good months to go in this year, there could be a possibility of another draw. Obviously, there hasn't been a STEM category draw. I mean, there has been a STEM category draw. There hasn't been a big one. Plus, we are also still waiting for one more category, which hasn't had a draw at all. That is the agriculture category. So let's see when that one happens. I'm assuming that category draw for agriculture should be next. Probably, let's see, what was this? 3rd of October, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th. So the week of the 2nd of October. So you could see another express entry draw on the 3rd of October, which would be probably a PNP and a general express entry draw as they have been conducting. You could see agriculture draw on 5th of October. That is what would be anticipated if, of course, IRCC continues with their draw schedule as we are hoping and expecting. Let's quick look at the pool breakdown, right? Now, the pool breakdown, obviously, there was a 5-week gap. The previous draw on the 15th of August was about 4,300 invitations were issued. Score came down to 496. Everybody was quite happy, hoping that the score should continue to tumble. But obviously, IRCC had other thoughts in mind or other plans. 601 to 1,200, you had 2,637. Ontario has been delaying their nominations for whatever the reason might be, but this was a lot of people who have received the nomination between 15th of August to now. So 2,600, that's a big number, to be very honest. Usually in a span of 2 weeks, you see about 600 to 800 people. This in a 5 week was 2,600, so almost more than about 1.5 times that you would expect. 501 to 600, that number has also increased to 3,091. This is pretty much the average that you would see. Every 2 weeks, you would see about 11 to 1,200 people. This time it's about 3,091, but this is after 5 weeks, right? If you look at this, it tells you that even with this draw of 3,200, that number between 501 to 600, the remaining number of people who are there in that group would still be a very big number. So if IRCC was to conduct a draw today and issue, let's say, another 3,000 invitations, you probably will still not see a score going below 500 at this point of time. And as and how we move forward, obviously more 500 plus candidates will keep entering the pool. There will be more people who will keep getting their nominations issued. So if IRCC is to conduct another regular express entry draw, let's say in 2 weeks' time, and probably issue a similar number of invitations, roughly about 3,000, that's what we are looking at, you would see the score in the 510s kind of a number. Why? Because in 2 weeks, you would have nominations in the range of anywhere between 600 to 1,000. And this 501, the 500 plus numbers would be approximately 3,500 at that point of time after clearing this. So with 3,500, 500 plus and about 1,600 plus, even if the issue, as I said, 3,000 some invitations, you would still see a score of about 500-ish, 510s is what I'm thinking. So let's see how that one goes. Anybody who is below 481 and expecting a draw, you guys really need to re-strategize, rethink how this is going to happen. Because yes, in April, IRCC did conduct 3 back-to-back draws of 7,000 each, because I guess they want to really clear out that big chunk of people who had gathered there. But to expect IRCC to conduct another of those big draws at this point of time, I don't think that's likely to happen. Yes, next year, when we move into the next calendar year, when IRCC is taking a fresh look at the number of invitations they want to issue, then yes, that can be a hope that we can have. But at this point of time, for this year, for the remainder of the year, it doesn't look likely. In my opinion, the number of invitations for this year is roughly between 85. I mean, I was always thinking about 80,000 ITAs, but obviously we have already crossed 80,000 ITAs for this year. We have already issued about 80,000, 81,000, roughly that number of invitations for this year. They probably will go up to 90, 92, probably in that range. And let's see how that one goes. The number of invitations that are being issued now, or for all invitations that are being issued now, they are all against the permanent residence quota for next year. This year's quota is already done for sure. Whoever they have already given out invitations, they will all, most of them, if the invitation was given before the June of this year, they're all accounted towards this year's PR quota. Everybody getting after June, July, August, they're all looking towards the next year's quota, because they will calculate what is the processing time, when will these people come to Canada if they're outside Canada, or when will they be confirming their permanent residence if they're inside Canada. And I'm also quite sure that they will meet this year's target by a big margin. In the sense, they will cross their target for this year's for permanent residence quotas by a big margin. They will it seems that they should cross 500,000 people as permanent residents for this year, if not very close to that. So let's see how that one goes. For the remainder of the year, definitely expecting the agriculture draw. I mean, that's but obvious, right? But for the other categories, I do anticipate a STEM category. I mean, at least I do anticipate. It was what happened with STEM categories seems like I do not know what was that, 500 invitations. So definitely expecting a STEM category draw. I also expect another healthcare category draw. Other than that, for other categories, you don't know much as to what IRCC is thinking. Of course, they have a better understanding of what their quotas, their numbers, their plans are. But at this point of time, it's in my opinion, it's probably going to be another STEM or healthcare. Because earlier, Sean Fraser, when he was the immigration minister, he did mention about 4,000 to 4,500 invitations on an average that they're looking to bring in under the healthcare category. Now, he never said anything about STEM category in terms of the numbers, but did indicate for the healthcare. So I'm assuming with those numbers in mind, that there may be a possibility of another draw for healthcare for sure. STEM is just logical. There has to be another draw, right? It just doesn't make sense. But then again, next year starts a new account of number of invitations, and next year is not too far now anyways, right? We are just almost 3 months away, and hopefully that should open the new account of ITAs and give us more invitations there. In other news, IRCC application backlog is slowly shrinking. So you remember all those backlogs that we have of 1.8 million, 2 million, almost 3 million applications that IRCC had during the COVID. And of course, that numbers kept reducing. This in 2022, IRCC actually finalized more than 5.2 million applications. This, of course, includes all kinds of TRVs, student visas, work permit applications, of course, permanent residence applications as well. And this number is now reduced. The backlogs have reduced to only 800,000 applications as of July 31. So that is a pretty good thing to happen. But even then, after all these years, after 2020 of COVID, 2021 of COVID, 2022 of COVID, we are at the end of 2023, and still you have about 800,000 applications in backlog, which is still a big number. I was hoping that they would have cleared out all the backlogs at least within this year. Doesn't seem that is going to happen. The recent data shows that IRCC has 631,500 PR applications in inventory. Out of this, 290,000 are backlogged. Now, backlogged applications basically means that they have exceeded their standard processing times. Now, standard processing times currently is 6 months. So if your application has exceeded 6 months, you are one of those 290,500 applications. Immigration in political battle, India versus Canada. Well, again, I've already said that at the beginning of the video. There is nothing much to add about it, but let's talk about the impact on immigration, right? I did a live stream yesterday as well, discussed that yesterday as well, but just to highlight the same thing. Currently, there is a restriction on Canadians to apply for a visit visa to India. That applies to the e-visas as well. So if you are a Canadian who's looking to apply for an Indian visa, unfortunately, at this point of time, you may not be able to do so. However, any kind of consular services that are required by Indian citizens or Indian passport services, if you are inside Canada, that is available, that is open. So you can absolutely go to BLS and you can still get your services done. So if you are looking to renew your passport, change your passport, extend your passport, get some attestations done, get your police clearances from India through the BLS, of course, then you can still get them done. There should not be a problem. Now, OCI applications, though earlier we understood they are being accepted, and I still haven't heard from anybody confirm and say that OCI applications are not being accepted or whatever. Now, mind you, the minute it's an OCI application, you no longer are an Indian citizen. You are now a Canadian citizen applying for an OCI. So I'm not sure how that service has been impacted, but if you're looking to apply for one, you can obviously reach out to BLS and get more clarity on that. But definitely, most certainly, the e-visas and visas for Canadian citizens to go to India or to apply for an Indian visa is at this point of time suspended by India, citing security and safety concerns, and which is hampering their operations. Even if you are a Canadian citizen and applying from a different country, third country, even then your visas may not be processed at this point of time. Again, as I said, citing safety and security concerns. This is as far as the visa applications are concerned. Now, as far as the travel is concerned, there is absolutely no restriction. If you have a valid visa to India, you can absolutely travel. If you have a valid visa to Canada, you can absolutely travel. There is no flight restrictions. There is no travel restrictions. There are no border restrictions. None of that has happened at this point of time. I also don't see any trade embargoes or trade restrictions at this point of time. So we do not know what the next step is going to be in this. As it currently stands, Canada expelled a senior diplomat to retaliate. India also expelled a senior diplomat of Canada. From there on, India has also suspended the visa services for Canada. Canada hasn't done that. Neither has Canada indicated that they're looking to do something of that sort. Uh, what has From there on, what has also happened is, I think it was early morning yesterday or day before, that it was 21st of September. Yes, the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson in India has indicated that they have requested Canada to reduce the number of its diplomatic staff in India to bring it at par with the number of reduced Indian diplomatic staff in Canada. Now, and obviously Canada is going to comply with that. Canada has already confirmed that they will be reducing their number of diplomatic staff in India. Now, this reduction of the diplomatic staff, I do not know that does that include the visa officers or not. Now, obviously, with the senior diplomatic staff gone, what kind of an impact does it have on IRCC's operation? Now, mind you, India is the largest visa operations outside Canada for Canada, right? So they do handle applications, not of course for across India. They also handle applications in a big number for Sri Lanka, for Afghanistan, for Nepal. They're all handled from India itself, and to some extent for some of the other neighboring countries as well. So India does operate in a large manner the visa operations. So this reduction of diplomatic staff, does it impact the visa operation staff or not? We don't know at this point of time. Also, if there were any Canadian immigration staff who are going to fly to who are going to fly to India and were needing visas, then obviously they will also get hampered. So the movement of staff, if the visas were needed, or movement of staff, if the reduction of the diplomatic staff has now is now in force, so that if it impacts, then there is a possibility of the backlogs increasing. You can see some processing delays. You can expect some processing delays if your application is being processed in India. Any application that is being processed outside India, not being processed in India, there is no impact whatsoever. If your application is being processed in Canada, there is no impact whatsoever. The visit visa applications, the study visa applications, work permit applications, spousal sponsorship applications, any interviews that are due for applications, what else is there? Those may be impacted if they were being processed by the Indian visa offices. All right. Apart from that, I don't see any concerns. Now, of course, a lot of you have sent your passports for stamping or are in the process of sending your passports for stamping. At this point of time, we have not heard of anything that will delay your stamping process, but do expect when you're calculating your expected processing time, do take this into account that this might get hampered a bit. Instead of expecting a 2-week return of your passport, probably expect a little bit more. But apart from that, there is nothing else that we have heard of which can impact. And we are hoping that this tension that is really, really unnerving, right? This is already creating a lot of frayed nerves. Just hoping that this gets settled at the earliest, so that we can get rid of this kind of tensions and unnecessary and unpleasant situation that has been created, and hopefully get on with what we normally do. Apart from that, that's basically all that I have to add for today's weekly roundup. By all means, please connect with us. Social media platforms, we're there everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, for some of you who like that. If you're still here, obviously hit the boop button so we get some more likes on this video so that it gets out to more and more people. But let's talk about a couple of other things, right? I mean, there have been a lot of people who have been asking about startup visas, and I know it's not the majority of you, but startup visas does continue to be very popular. And one of the reasons why it is popular is because this gives an option for those people who otherwise have no other option to come to Canada because they do not have express entry points. They're not even eligible in express entry. They may not have a master's degree, bachelor's degree, that kind of scores. So therefore, they will not be able to apply. But if you have a tech innovative idea, it has to be tech, or something to do with tech, or it has to be within the engineering field, it has to be something within the sustainability field. And if you have those kind of ideas, even if you do not have an idea directly, or you cannot put it into some form, but you have a direction in which you want to go, then there are consultants, lawyers, agents, yours truly, we can help you program it or put it together in a way that it becomes a proper pitch that you can then make a pitch to an incubator, angel investor, venture capitalist, depending on which stage your tech idea is. And based on that, you get a letter of support. Once you get a letter of support, you will be able to apply for permanent residence directly. You will also be able to apply for a work permit, open work permit, for all the directors in that application, and also your families. So basically, if you're married, you have a spouse, or you are in a relationship, a common law relationship, you have a partner, they can also come to Canada on an open work permit. Of course, your children are also eligible to get a study permit if they're a school-going age. This is the fundamental premise of startup visa. Your startup, once you establish this business in Canada, does not need to see a success. I mean, we all know, right? 90% of the startups fail. So your PR application is not contingent on the fact that your startup must succeed. It is contingent on the fact that you absolutely make genuine efforts, and that you are working towards making this successful, that you are working towards establishing your business. You're conducting all the activities that you indicate in your business plan. A lot of agents that you deal with will not be able to guide you with that, because they don't even understand what is being said. At this point of time, IRCC has become very strict with startup visa applications because of so much of fraudulent activities, especially within some of the Middle Eastern countries, where they try to sell you this as a concept, like $45,000, $50,000, $60,000 is what they charge you. They try to combine more than one family or one application. They will sell it to 5 different people, make a group out of these 5 people, and then present that application. And these 5 people don't even know each other. They will make a WhatsApp group for these 5 people and sort of give you that information. The problem is that IRCC is now conducting interviews. They can do a phone interview. They can also call you in an office. And when they do this phone interview, and they probably will speak to all the directors. And what happens then is that if it is identified, there was one interview which has happened with one of our clients. It went on for more than 2.5 hours. Okay. And it was quite a strict interview, where they asked from everything about each other. I mean, so if there were 4 partners, in this case, there were 4 partners. They asked about each other's activities, each other's responsibilities, their backgrounds, the number of family members. They asked about what the activities are, which stage your business is currently in, what kind of funding you have received or you're looking to get, or what have been your marketing activities. It was really a strict interview, but it is happening. It is happening with a lot of applications. So people who are guaranteeing a startup visa application, don't fall for those guarantees. It doesn't work like that. I mean, a lawyer, a consultant, an agent can never guarantee you an application. Only IRCC can, but even IRCC doesn't guarantee. They will tell you that if you comply with all the requirements, then you may be approved depending on your circumstances. So therefore, if you're looking at startup visa applications, please be very careful when you deal with these kind of people, because out of this 4 people or 5 people that you add in one application, even if one gets refused, then unfortunately all of you get refused. And if there is a misrepresentation, then that's even worse. So be very careful when you get into this kind of an arrangement, especially with the agents who are sitting in some of these Middle Eastern countries and trying to sell you this concept. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about was about LMIAs. Now, we all know that the underbelly of Canadian immigration has been buying and selling of LMIAs. The document, the LMIA by itself, could be legit, could be genuine, but the process of buying and selling an LMIA is fundamentally illegal. If IRCC identifies that you have bought or you have paid for an LMIA, then you could also land yourself in trouble, because that would be considered as an illegal job offer and therefore land you under misrepresentation. However, if you want to genuinely do this, then there is another way to go about it. You can actually buy a business, a small business in Canada, go through the understanding of that business, and probably you might also be able to get 1 or 2 or 3 LMIAs, genuine LMIAs, and probably hire people who you really need to, and in the process help them into getting to Canada through that process as well. But be very careful with this kind of an arrangement, because this is also becoming quite common. I know of one person who has very recently purchased a small business which is of a restaurant franchise, because he genuinely wanted to get into the restaurant franchise business. Because of that, he was also able to get himself an owner-operator LMIA, though the owner-operator LMIA by the term itself doesn't exist anymore. That has been phased out. It's now a high wage LMIA. So he was able to get an LMIA for himself. And by that, he was also able to get LMIAs for two of his known people, cousins or friends, I do not know. But then they also had good experience within the restaurant business, so they can help him get the business done. Of course, he was not able to find anybody who could do the same job here in Canada. But as you can see, people are able to figure out ways of doing it in a legit and a genuine manner instead of falling into the illegal trap. And therefore, you can consider something of that similar type as well. This is basically all that I had to talk to you about at this point of time. But let's see, there are quite a few questions. So let's see how those are looking like. Ashray, thank you for your super chat. It says, I have score of 483. My work permit expires early February 2024. Do you think regular EE draws would come down to 480s? If not, would IRCC extend postgraduate work permit? I'm really worried. Well, I'm worried too. Let's see the first question first. Second question first. Will IRCC extend postgraduate work permit? The answer is I don't know. And I don't know because what IRCC chooses to do, what they're planning to do, none of us knows. And if at all they do choose to extend the work permits, that information will come to us only next year, probably mid next year or later. Yeah, sometimes mid next year. The chances of that happening at this point of time seems quite unlikely. They extended work permits in 2020. They extended work permits in 21, 22, 23. Unfortunately, at this point of time, I don't think there are any circumstances that would dictate that they should extend postgraduate work permit again. Also, keep in mind, with so much of hue and cry that is ongoing in Canada in terms of the unemployment, in terms of the housing crisis, at this point of time, I guess the government will only be trying to look at ways that they can then go out and tell people that, hey, we're trying to get some control here. Now, instead, if they were to go out and tell people that, hey, we are only extending these work permits where there is already a lot of, I wouldn't say negative, but I would say a sentiment which is not very encouraging. So in my opinion, because of all these circumstances, I am not very convinced, or I wouldn't bet my money to say that postgraduate work permits will be extended yet again. That's my explanation. Now, as far as 483 is concerned, at least for this year, for the remainder of the year, I do not see 480s happening anytime soon. Yes, of course, IRCC is the one who will decide it. I'm just talking about my opinion plainly and based on the numbers that we are seeing. So I don't see it happening at this point of time. And even if we move to the next year, at least in the early part of the year, I also do not anticipate the scores to drop to 480s, at least to low 480s at this point of time. Yes, at probably towards the mid of the year, if IRCC has continued with the large number of draws or the large express entry draws, then that's a possibility. Now, what can you do? What you can do is, you still have time. We are in September. You probably are looking at February. What you can do is you can try and gain at least 6 months of work experience in one of the categories that have been listed as in demand occupations, right? The 6 categories, including French. If you have 6 months of work experience, then you would become eligible in one of those categories. And based on that, you will have a chance of getting invited. I would say do it anyways. And the reason for that is this will become your backup plan. That if 483 is not getting invited, at least you have a backup plan with the category-based draws. And if that happens, 483 definitely seems a possibility. Okay, what else have we got? Kshitij, thank you for the super chat. Unpopular thought. STEM category favors IT, computer science graduates and workers. Ridiculous to see that engineering managers are including, but no mechanical engineers or any sort of technologist for any other major engineering field. Well, why IRCC does certain things, what is the basis for that, what is the background for that, what is the thought process, we don't know. What will happen is, end of January next year, IRCC is required, the Minister of Immigration is required to table to the Parliament the complete data on the the complete data on the category-based draws. I think by the first week of February, this has to happen. And in that tabled report, they will indicate on what basis they have chosen all the categories, what did they intend to accomplish, and what they did accomplish. We will also get a better understanding of the quotas that they have, or rather they had in mind for these categories. That probably will give us much better understanding of why certain NOC codes are included, why the others are not, why civil engineers are included, why mechanical engineers are not included. We probably will have a better insight now. That at that point of time, once we see that report. Right now, you and I, we can just talk about it and feel popular, unpopular thought. I can't say that, but that's all we can do. We can't really have a better understanding. And as I said, IRCC has the final word in this, right? PZD question, all completed on tracker on 15th of September. I have seen people get PPR the same day or next day. Am I to expect delays in final decision due to current news? Question 2, sister is an English teacher, any stream for her? Well, for English teacher streams, you will have to check different PNP programs to see if there is any eligibility there. As a teacher, occupation-wise, there is nothing there in any of the PNP programs. Yeah, I can't remember anything, but you'll have to check individual PNP programs. Now, as far as the PPR is concerned and the final decision is concerned, again, if you are seeing movement in your tracker, then I guess the application is continuing to be processed, and therefore I don't expect any delays. If your application is being processed in India at this point of time, as I said, you may expect some delays, but if your application is being processed anywhere but India, then I think there should not be any concerns at this point of time. Divyang says, I have landed in September as international student, had to drop a course, got new admission in January, informed IRCC. Does this affect my work permit application? Can I stay? Well, if you have already landed in September, you have dropped a course, you have got admission in January 24, it does not impact your work permit, which you will apply after you complete your studies. And yes, you can continue to stay in Canada. The only thing you cannot do is work. Please do not work. You haven't started studying. You will start studying only in January. You can only start working in January. Until that time, you cannot work. But yes, you can absolutely stay in Canada. Your status is valid, and you can obviously apply for your postgraduate work permit after your studies have been completed. No problem there. All right, Patel says, Patel, if I arrive in Canada for the first time after PR through EE, is it a problem if I come with a return ticket to India? I need to visit home country after 2 months. Later, I will come to Canada. Well, good question. This is something which a lot of people talk about. Well, what you're trying to ask me is about soft landing. Now, once you arrive in Canada, no one is asking for your return ticket because you're a permanent resident. Nobody's interested if you're going, not going. And also having a return ticket is also not a problem. Listen, you are a permanent resident. You are not a bonded slave or a labor or something of that sort where you are now bound by having to stay in Canada. You have signed a contract or your PR is conditional that you cannot leave Canada. None of that. You're a permanent resident. Once you are confirmed as a permanent resident, once your COPR has been signed by the border officer, you are then a permanent resident. You can travel out the same day if you wish to. So whether you have a return ticket, whether you don't have a return ticket, it absolutely makes no difference. No one is checking, so please do not worry about it. Okay. I have 3 years of Canadian experience, but I would like to claim points for only 2 years. How can I do that while editing my Express Entry profile without doing any misrepresentation? Okay, good experience, a good question. Now, the thing is, you can choose to claim any portion of your work experience and choose to not claim points for any other portion of your work experience. So this is what you will do. For the period of work experience that you're claiming points for, or you wish to claim credit for, you will mention it in the work history. The period of work experience that you don't wish to claim points for, that period of work experience will go in your personal history after you get your ITA. Now, you can have documentation which says that you were working for 3 years, but you're claiming points for 2 years. You can have documentation that says that you were working part-time as an international student, and then you started working full-time, and once you have applied for your postgraduate work permit, that's also fine. In this case, obviously, you cannot claim points for your work experience as an international student. So you can, in your work history, you can mention only that period of work for which you're claiming points for. Any other period of work that you don't wish to claim points for whatever the reason might be, all that goes in your personal history. And obviously, the personal history section appears in your application after you have received an ITA. This is not misrepresentation. You are still declaring all your activities. You are still declaring all your work experience. It's just that you're not claiming points. Anything that you're claiming points for goes in your work history. Otherwise, all other activities, including the work experience you're not claiming points for, goes in your personal activities. I hope that helps. Okay. All right. I have completed my 3 years of experience in one profession and I have a CRS of 487. Should I change my job for being fallen in category-based draws? Will this be an issue? No. This is not an issue. You can gain additional work experience. That is not a problem. You can mention multiple periods of work experience in your work history, even if it is for more than 3 years. I know the maximum period of work experience that you can get points for is 3 years in CRS. The maximum points you get for work experience for your eligibility as a foreign skilled worker, federal skilled worker, is for 6 years. So therefore, by all means, have multiple periods of work experience. You can have 3 years of work experience. You can have another 6 months of work experience doing something that is listed as one of the categories, and it's absolutely fine. There is a possibility you can still get picked up for it. No issues there. Any hope for OIMP draw or STEM in this month? Well, this month is already coming to a close. We just have 1 week, but again, Ontario does not indicate or publish any schedule as to when they will conduct their draw. So there is no way to say when that would happen. Okay. Start date of education I did in India submitted during my study permit is different from what I filled in EE. Will that create an issue? Start date of education I did in India submitted during my study permit is different from what I filled in EE. No, it's not an issue as long as you can substantiate it. I'm sure you will have a reason as to why that is different. If you're willing to explain, if IRCC asks you, it should not be an issue, but you should ensure that you mention all the information correctly in your express entry application, even if there has been a mistake in your previous applications. Okay. Will there be Ontario skilled trade draws? Well, honestly, I don't really know because there is no way to anticipate or expect what kind of draws Ontario or any other province will do at this point of time because they have their own schedule and quotas. Can I extend my postgraduate work permit if it will be expired soon? I did not receive invitation yet. Well, postgraduate work permits can be extended if you are eligible until 31st of December 2023. So if your postgraduate work permit is expiring in 2023, yes, you can still extend it. And by all means, go ahead and do it. I have received a federal ITA recently. Can I withdraw OINP application once the processing has started? Yes, you can withdraw your Ontario application. Even if you don't withdraw your Ontario application, the chances are they will cancel it because Ontario no longer has the access to your express entry profile because you have now received an ITA. But by all means, go ahead and withdraw your application. I have received NOI from Ontario, but I am not proceeding with this as my application with Quebec is already in process. Will my profile be considered with Ontario next draw as I have not accepted notification of interest? If you create a new express entry profile, that can certainly be that will certainly attract a notification of interest. If the same notification of interest in the same express entry profile is not being accepted, then excuse me, then the chances are at times Ontario may not invite that profile again. I have received notification of interest in human capital priorities draw with spouse non-accompanying and planning to add spouse after nomination. Do I need to explain anything about including spouse while submitting expression of interest? Expression of interest. There is no expression of interest here. But yes, there could be under certain conditions, depending on how you are. You may be able to add your spouse, but you will need to inform Ontario. Then you will need to make the changes and, of course, explain in your application as well. COPR has destination as Calgary. If I land in Toronto from India for COPR stamping, can I stay in Toronto for some days, or do I need a flight ticket from Toronto to Calgary the same day as proof, no PNP? Well, if you are not a nominee, if you're not a provincial nominee, you can land anywhere in Canada and you can reside anywhere in Canada. Of course, if you arrive in Quebec, you can also land in Quebec, you can arrive in Quebec, there is no problem with that. But if you land in Quebec, your intention should be to reside outside Quebec if you have applied under express entry. That is the only condition. If your COPR has destination Calgary, it doesn't matter. You are not a nominee, you're not a provincial nominee. You can live, you can reside anywhere in Canada, that's not a problem. You can land anywhere, that is also not a problem. They will not ask you for anything, don't worry. I have a nomination from Saskatchewan during soft landing. Can I give an address outside Saskatchewan for PR card delivery? Well, technically you can. However, it might raise a concern. It might raise a flag with the border officer, and that can create a bit of a additional questioning which you do not want to be subjected to. What you should do instead is just inform the border officer that you don't have an address at this point of time, and that when you will have an address, then you will inform them. And once you have confirmed your permanent resident status and you have exited the airport, after that, you can inform IRCC directly through the web form and through the change of address form that IRCC has about your address. It could be anywhere for your PR card. And that could probably work better without any issues, right? That's what you want. Okay. Toxoid says, can I travel to India after AOR? What happens to my PCC? Okay, a good question. A lot of people have this concern. Can you travel after you submit your application? You can absolutely travel, do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. You can travel back to your home country. You can travel to any other country. It does not matter. It does not make your PCC invalid. Why? Because you have already submitted your application. After submitting your application, every single thing in your application is locked. That's it. Nothing changes there. Just because you have traveled, you will not be asked for another PCC. Just because you have traveled, you will not be asked for any other document. Heck, IRCC doesn't even want to know if you are traveling. Only case when IRCC wants to know what's going on is, one, if there is a change in your family composition. They want to know there is a change in your address. For example, if you change a country, you want to now live in a different country. Whether you were in Canada, you've gone back to your home country, you were in home country, you've come in living in Canada. So any change of address, they want to know. They want to know change in your employment status only if one of the reasons why you are applying for your application is because of an arranged job offer. Okay, only in that case, they are interested in knowing about your employment changes. Other than that, they don't want to know anything. Please, by all means, travel. You probably need the break after that stressful application. Kumarville says, I have received notification of interest from Ontario, but I'm not proceeding with this application. Oh, we just answered this one, right? Yeah. I have 6 months of experience in STEM and I have CRS score of 479. Do you think STEM draw could come under 480s at all for STEM? Any chances? Well, I personally believe, and I'm hoping, of course, because I stay forever hopeful, that there should be a STEM category draw. There would be a STEM category draw. That, at least that's what I'm thinking. What the scores will be for that draw, I don't know, because that entirely depends on what will be the number of invitations that are issued. And it also depends on how many people are there in the express entry pool in the STEM categories. Those two will define what the CRS scores are. And there is no way for me to know what that numbers are. And therefore, there is no way to speculate what the scores will be. In the past, with the Ontario's tech draw, the scores have gone right down to 458s, right? But Ontario's tech draw only includes 10 NOC codes. IRCC's STEM category includes 24 NOC codes, which basically means there are more people in the express entry pool with those NOC codes. And there hasn't been a draw below 496 for a very long time. Therefore, there could be a lot of people who are there in the express entry pool with those 24 NOC codes. until and unless IRCC announces or issues some information to say how many invitations they are looking to issue, there is no way to speculate. But 479 certainly seems like a good score. If there are X number of, I would say there are more invitations issued, then you should definitely have a chance there. I have 489 CRS score, living in Sarnia, IELTS maxed out, 1 year work permit left. What should I do? What would you do? Or should I wait? I am never going to pay 35,000 for LMIA. If you have 1 year work permit left, I would probably find an employer in a different province who is willing to support my application. I would probably go to the Atlantic provinces. That's where a lot of, even Atlantic, as much as we do recommend moving to Atlantic provinces, because you can go through the PNP program or you can go through the Atlantic immigration program. It's actually getting quite competitive there as well. It's not rocket science. It's not a hidden secret that nobody knows. It's not a hidden door that nobody knows. Everybody is now quite familiar with the fact that Atlantic provinces do offer a good option. In addition to that, Alberta rural immigration program is there. In Ontario's RNIP is there. Manitoba has a program. You have 1 year of work experience. You have a job offer. That is there. If I have 1 year of work permit left, first of all, I wouldn't have waited just to have 1 year work permit left. If it was me, I would have done something already. Another thing is you have 489. 489 has already been invited a few times already. So I'm not sure why you did not get invited at that point of time. Secondly, if there is if it is 1 year more left, right, I could also add French. I would go absolutely aggressive, full throttles onto French. I would attack it with all my energy and put in the effort there, because French will take me a long way. You have the French speaker stream, you have the IRCC's French proficiency stream and the Ontario stream. Those will also give me that advantage. So these are all the options in front of me. The problem is, because a lot of us are comfortable, we are in a comfort zone. We like what we are doing right now. We have a house, or we are living in a house, we have rented it out, in some cases purchased it out, very few cases purchased it out, but we have rented it out. We have set our own life around ourselves. Everything is working well for us. We may have a good job. The moving out of this situation is extremely uncomfortable and very difficult. And therefore, a lot of people look for easy options. And if you obviously don't want to spend 35,000, though that's a good rate, to be very honest. But if you don't want to spend that kind of money, then you know what you need to do, right? That's probably what I would do. Swati, sorry, there's no chat. Some info on customs declaration for PR landing. The customs declaration is the same. When you arrive in Canada, you will be asked the purpose of your visit. You will say you are a permanent resident who's landing for the first time. You will also be asked if you have any past criminal convictions, any medical conditions that have happened, any changes in your family circumstances, family conditions. Once you have said no, you will sign it. Your border officer will sign it. You will then become your PR. At the immigration counter, they would also ask you, what are you carrying with you? How much money are you carrying? How much currency are you carrying? Are you carrying any prescription drugs? Are you carrying any items which are for commercial purposes? Are you carrying any dairy products? Are you carrying any vegetable, and agricultural products? And are you carrying any contraband? Once you have answered these questions correctly, then you will have no problem. And if you are indeed carrying any of these items, then the best thing would be to declare. If you don't declare, then that's a problem. But if you do declare it and you have proper documentation to show that what you're bringing is legit, it's legal, then you will have absolutely no problem. Don't get too worried about it. It's a very simple, straightforward process. It's not different than landing in any country. If you follow the law, if you follow the rules, all the information of what you can and cannot carry is available on the CBSA website. What you can carry, in what quantities you can carry. As a permanent resident, you are arriving for the first time in Canada, you probably have no issues with the customs. So you can carry anything that you want to carry with you in terms of your belongings. And if you have any belongings that are to be imported at a later date, please make sure you are also carrying a goods to follow list so that the CBSA can stamp it, the customs can stamp it, and you can import those items at a later date and you will not have to pay any duty on it. I hope that helps. Any impact on application by knowing VO by calling IRCC. I don't understand that question, but there is no impact on application. I mean, your knowing what is your visa office gives you no advantage whatsoever. I know a lot of people are very anxious about knowing what is their visa office. But for example, even if your visa office is Nova Scotia, Sydney, if your visa office is London, UK, if your visa office is New Delhi, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything about it, right? You will just know, and you will probably go to social media platforms and you will start seeing more posts and more comments by other people who are getting processed through the same visa office, and you will start getting more anxious. You will get more stressed sometimes. So at least I don't see any help or advantage that you can get by knowing your visa office, except for the fact that if you have to raise a specific web form to send to that visa office because you're sending some documentation or some information, fair enough. Then you might need to know your visa office so that you can direct your web form to that visa office. Other than that, there is absolutely no advantage. All right, let's go through some last few questions before I scoot off. Can I show funds arranged by sale of my golden car 2 weeks before submission? What documents do I need to show? Funds except account maintenance letter, bank statement, sale deeds, and cash deposit receipt. Well, that's basically it. You will need to show your bank letter. You will need to show a 6 months bank statement. You will need to show proof of where the funds have come from. Obviously, you'll give a letter of explanation. You'll provide the sale deed, and obviously you'll provide that the assets actually belonged to you before you are selling them off. And that's primarily it. Rohit says Montreal is a French-speaking province. Incorrect. Montreal is a French-speaking city. Quebec is the province. Can non-French speakers stay there and work? Also, what is the timeline for SOWP applied in July? So yeah, I mean, there are tons and tons and tons of non-French speakers who live in Montreal. There is no problem. It's only when you get out of the main urban city like Montreal and you go to a smaller rural areas in Quebec where the language of choice is French, where if you do not speak French, then you might have a bit of a communication issue. But in Montreal itself, there is absolutely no issue. As far as timeline for spouse open work permit is concerned, it's best to check the IRCC website for the processing times, which are updated. It could vary anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, depending on which country your spouse is currently residing in. Can one show two jobs as current jobs if one is in the morning and other one is in the evening? Yes, you can show, of course, there is no problem with that. The only problem is that you will get points only for one, because the system gives you points for a maximum of 30 hours. So if both these jobs are part-time, 15 hours, then you will get points for both. You'll get points for 15, so 30 hours. But if both of them are 30 hours or 30 and 40 or 20 and 30, and you get a maximum points for 30 hours per week. So you can still show the work experience. If you don't want to, then you can show one work experience period in your work history and the other in your personal history. But yes, to answer your question, yes, you can. Is it mandatory to maintain some foreign and Canada job field experience? To proceed PR, I was supervisor in India. Now I got work in salon. I don't understand that question, to be very honest. So, but if you're asking that, do you need to have work experience outside Canada to then have a job in? No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Can I change spouse non-accompanying status to accompanying status? I submitted my profile with non-accompanying account, but I want to change now after ITA. Yes, you can. There is in your application, there is a family modification tab. If you click on that, you will be able to change your status from your spouse accompanying to non-accompanying or vice versa. Please keep in mind that that may also impact your scores. How much time in background check IRCC takes? There is no standard timeline. And also, I know you're looking at your PR tracker and you're saying background check over there and you're getting all anxious. PR tracker is not the most reliable source of information on your application, to be very honest. Actually, there is no source of information as to what exactly is going on in your application. Yes, PR tracker gives you some sort of sense of relief, but not reliable at all. And background check can take anywhere from few hours to few years sometimes, to be very honest. Hopefully it doesn't take years in most applications, but there is no timeline to offer you as to how long it will take. There are so many times when it shows background check completed, and it shows completed for months, and the application still is not finalized or processed. So I have zero faith in the application PR trackers or the PR application trackers. With 480, will I get ITA? My job valid under STEM category. I'm worried. I'm carrying will on mat leave, studied here, applied for PR 6 months back, ignored. I can't really understand. You've been trying to cut the words, and so I'll just concentrate on the question that I can understand. With 480, will I get an IT? I don't know. There is no way for me to tell you that. But 480 in a STEM, if it is an IT, then it's a good score. Hopefully, Ontario NOC, so Ontario Tech Draw can help you there. As far as I earlier answered, there is no way for me to know how many invitations are going to be issued, how many people are there with the specific categories within the pool, and therefore there is no way to ascertain what will be the score. But definitely 480 is a good score. It all depends on how many invitations are going to be issued. Received NOI from Quebec. My wife is the main applicant. She's a teacher, gets paid in cash because she's insured under my name. We reside in Lebanon. Is it a problem? I don't practice Quebec. I don't practice Quebec immigration. I'm not licensed to practice in Quebec. So I have very little information because that's an area which I don't practice, hence I don't go much into it. But as long as you can prove your work experience, that's where it matters the most. As long as you can establish and prove your work experience, then you should be fine. Right. Okay, we'll just take this last one before I go. I didn't mention some foreign work experience in my study permit application. Can I include it for express entry? Would an LOE help? Now, the thing is, this is where it gets tricky. You did not show your work experience. Why? Because it served a purpose for you. So you chose to lie on your application. Now, because it is advantageous to you, so you want to show your work experience. What do you want to tell you, right? Then show it, don't hurry, it's not going to be a problem. What are you going to tell in your LOE? Well, hello, I didn't want to show it before because it may have impacted my study permit, but now I want to because it will positively give me more points. Think about it. If IRCC then identifies that you misrepresented in your study permit application, you can still get banned for 5 years. It doesn't matter whether you misrepresented in your previous application or not. The idea is that you misrepresented. You came to Canada on a misrepresentation. Therefore, if you have not disclosed deliberately any past work experience, education in your study permit, work permit applications, and now you want to do it in your express entry application, then the choice is yours. The decision is yours, and the risk is also yours. Always think about it. You chose to hide it before, but now you want to disclose it because it's in your advantage. How IRCC is going to perceive it, that's on their discretion. So think before you do that. I know there are plenty of questions. By all means, please post them in the comments below so that I can take a look at it once. I'll come back and take a look at it. I need to rush now. Thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate your taking the time to join in today's live stream. We shall do this again soon. Until then, take care and stay forever hopeful.